So I'm always wondering how to have the right mode of presentation, because this is, you can see the next slide always, right?
We can see the first slide, Marietta. It's just not the presentation mode.
Okay, let me just find it and then we start again. Okay, so welcome to our lab team. Welcome to our experts and our guests today. We are happy to have you for our first prototype pitching session today, and it's our first out of 2 sessions that are taking place today and tomorrow. So thanks to all the 4 teams for the hard work in the last weeks, and we are happy to have representatives from the country teams of Costa Rica, Grenada, Zambia, and Zimbabwe join us today. So we were wondering what we would be able to do today as a check-in, and we thought the easiest is for you to rename yourself, that we can see your name and country team. And then please use the chat box to share what you're looking forward to today. So we can have a look roughly what you're, in what mood you're coming in. So I'm waiting for some chat box answers to come in now. I can tell you that I'm super excited to be here, as you might be able to tell from my face. Really looking forward for this part of the process. So Fernando is saying, looking forward to learning. That sounds really good. Our experts are here to support you. And also we are looking forward to maybe bringing them in at another point in time as well. So let's see this as a start of a discussion that might last, a little longer potentially. Doreen is sharing, excited and anxious, waiting to get feedback from the coaches. So Zambia is going to go first, so I can really imagine what that feeling is like. Rachel, who is part of our expert panel today, is excited to hear the pitches. Natasha, part of the Grenada team, is eager to hear the presentations. So don't hesitate to bring in your comments in the chat box while I continue with the next few slides here. So we're very happy to have our expert panel here today. And I would like to introduce you to our experts that you can see, whom you can see on the slide here. So we will have 3 panelists today because unfortunately Andrea had a family emergency and had to cancel at the last minute. However, we would like to introduce you to Andrea at another point in time because she's one of our A2I closer colleagues, and we think that she could be a great asset and a good expert to turn to in your innovation journey. So you might get to know her another time. So let me start with Elias. So welcome, Elias. You might have seen him in the with his video turned on earlier. Elias is an alumnus of the first Inclusive Insurance Innovation Lab, where he was part of the Kenya team. And that was at a time when he worked as an actuary at the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Kenya. Elias has over 10 years of experience in developing policies and regulations in the financial sector. His expertise lies in risk-based regulation and automation of supervisory processes in the financial sector. So amongst other things, and I'm just naming a few, Elias set up the regulatory sandbox, Beamer Box, and InsurTech accelerator platform, Beamer Lab. And Elias now leads the development and implementation of programs that work to improve the enabling environment for risk markets in Africa at FSD Africa. Welcome, Elias, and thank you so much for being with us today. And I was wondering whether you could just share, what you're looking forward to today and whatever you want to say before we start.
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe just to begin, I want to appreciate the invitation from A2I. I believe that the work that you are currently doing across the continent is really helping different markets to bridge the protection gap and in one or the other really create the resilience that is necessary for that is required in this particular continent. And that it's great to meet the teams from Grenada, Zambia, Costa Rica, and which one am I missing? Zimbabwe. Yeah, and I believe that they're looking into really transforming the market spaces. And definitely, what am I looking for? I'm looking for, I would say, the next ideas to transform the insurance space. We've been talking about really seeing a unicorn within the insurance space across the continent. And I believe that with what the teams have done in the last couple of months and weeks, this would be transformative in terms of really enabling us to get the next insurance unicorn in this particular continent. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to discuss and share, and even just to get ourselves into these exciting, I would say, ideas that are going to be presented this particular day. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias, and looking forward to hearing more from you later on. So let me introduce you to Rachel next. Rachel Field has been developing and leading diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for international companies and nonprofit organizations for 2 decades. Rachel also facilitates leadership trainings and emotional intelligence workshops, and she is an executive coach. So Rachel, together with her colleague Shilpi Shastri, whom you're going to meet tomorrow, they are both supporting the A2RI in its gender strategy. And so we're looking forward, to having you here today and to your input to the session. Prior experience at AXA, Avon, and Women's World Banking focused also on diversity and inclusion programs. And interestingly, Rachel began her career as a social worker in New York City, working with at-risk populations for 10 years. So we're really excited to have you here with us, Rachel. And I'm wondering whether you could also share, what you're looking forward to and anything you would like to raise before we start.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. These kinds of sessions are the most interesting.
Sound. Let me just call, I've lost sound, Bakabungo. My sound.
Sorry for that. We're just going to mute everyone. Okay. Yeah, please feel free to start.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear the pitches. I think this is the kind of work that to me feels really exciting, because when I think about just how big the opportunity is on the regulatory side to move the needle and have more people have access to, products that will protect themselves and their families, like this is the kind of, this is the most fun session or, fun part of my week already. So I'm super excited just to hear the pitches.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And last but not least, Agrotosh. I would like to introduce Agrotosh to you. So Agrotosh Mukherjee is a fully qualified actuary from the UK actuarial profession. So, one of Elias's colleagues in terms of the expertise that you bring in. Agrotosh has extensive experience of agricultural and index insurance products and has worked in more than 25 countries in Africa, Asia, and Europe. Agrotosh's areas of expertise include weather index insurance, yield index insurance, multi-peril indemnity, crop and livestock insurance, micro health, life, mobile-based, and other types of mass market insurance products. Agrotosh specializes in product design and pricing and has also worked in other actuarial areas, such as reserving, capital modeling, and reinsurance. So Agrotosh is the owner of his firm Risk Shield, which he founded in 2015, And before that, he was the principal actuary of Microinsure and has previously worked with Interhannover in London and ILO in Bangladesh, as well as Aviva in the UK. Welcome, Agrotosh, and thank you so much for being with us today. Would you like to share what you're looking forward to today and anything you would like, to add before we start the session?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, so I think just to echo the other experts' take on this, that I'm looking forward to hearing the different pitches and coming across, the different ideas that are presented by the different participants. I think it'll also be very interesting to hear the pitches from the Zambian team as well as all the other countries. But maybe Zambian is kind of a bit more interesting in a way, in the sense that because I'm based here myself, but I'm also looking forward equally to hearing pitches from the other countries as well, and to see how the different ideas from the different pitches could be relevant both in their countries as well as in other countries as well. Thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to the pitches. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Akrotosh. And before I move to the next slide, I would also like to highlight that we have a few more guests on this call today. We have Astrid Zwick, who's head of the Secretariat of the InsurResilience Global Partnership, who's our knowledge partner on this in this Inclusive Insurance Innovation Lab. And welcome, Astrid, to this call, and we're looking forward, to having you here as well.
Hello. Yes, hello to everybody.
Hi, Astrid. Thank you so much for being with us. We also have a few of the A2RI team members who are part of this call, and they're curious to see what you've been working on. So you know who's here today. So let me just share one last piece of information before I hand over the moderation to Yannis and Rachel. We are looking forward to the two teams who are presenting today, Zambia first and Costa Rica second. And tomorrow we will have Zimbabwe and Grenada present. And we also have some awards that we're planning. So at the end of tomorrow's session, we will be asking participants of the call to vote for the following awards: most promising, most impactful, innovative, appealing to users, feasible, and scalable. So while you are watching the pitches today and tomorrow, we encourage you, to already start making up your mind what you think, most suits the teams presentations that you're seeing today. And we will be announcing the awards at the end of tomorrow's session. So this is it from my end for now. And with this, I would like to hand over to Yannis, who will lead you through the session. Good luck to the teams presenting today, and I'm really looking forward to this session.
Thanks, Mariella, and good to see the teams again ready to present. As you know, we have an exciting and fast-paced session organized today for the pitching process. Mariella just described the sequence. So today we have Zambia followed by Costa Rica. Tomorrow we would have Zimbabwe and Grenada. And the way we're gonna run the process is it's gonna be fast-paced. You'll have each team will get about 10 minutes to present. So the presentation is roughly structured around what's the problem you're trying to solve, what's the idea about, and how does it solve the problem, and what do you need from the panelists or our coaches. And we're gonna imagine this is kind of like a dragon's den, or I've been informed by my colleagues that this is called a shark tank in the US. Different animals, I guess, in the different sides of Atlantic. So, they're here to be provocative but helpful, as well as maybe even funny at times. We'll see what we get. So I also like to welcome our coaches, or our sharks, or our dragons for the session that's going to follow up. They'll give you some feedback one after the other. We'll hear from Rachel, we'll hear from Elias and Akrotosh, and then you'll also get some feedback from your peers. So we'll also have a bit of time for you to get feedback from the other teams, and then we're going to move on to the next team. So that's the what's on the menu for the day. before we get started with Zambia, I'd like to invite everyone, if you could switch on your cameras just for this moment, so we can take a photo before we start the pitching process. So it'd be great to get a screenshot basically of everyone being here, and it would be much nicer if we have your face and not your name written up on a black box. So please, I'll give everyone half a minute to just switch on their cameras, and then we'll take a group photo. So I'm just going to invite also my A2I colleagues to be ready to take that perfect shot. Let's see who's, yeah, most people have switched on the cameras. So should we do it on the count of 3 then? Let's maybe have a
Are
little.
you taking the picture, Yanis?
Do you want me to do that as well? I can do that.
That's the best so far.
I can do that. I can take the picture, yeah. Okay, we'll have to do it twice though, because I have you on 2 different parts of my screen. So I don't know who's going to be in the 2 photos. So, okay, we'll take half of the group now. I don't know who it is, but smile in both if you want, or frown, whatever you want to do. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Great. And let's take it one more time. The other half of the group. 1, 2, 3. Great. I think we got everyone. Fantastic. So without further ado, we'll move straight with Zambia. I'm going to hand over the ball to Rachel to take us through that part. My role was mainly to take the family photo. So you'll hear back from me when we're doing Costa Rica. So Rachel, over to you to host the Zambia team.
Thanks so much, Yanis, and really great to see you all again, and looking forward to this session. Just to our guests, Rachel, Elias, Agrotosh, and Astrid. I'm Rachel Jones. I'm from Rios Partners, and I've been guiding the Zambia team. And I will hand over to Doreen, who's with the Prudential and Insurance Authority of Zambia, and she'll be presenting on behalf of the team. So just to say to the team members, after your 10 minutes, which Doreen, maybe I can indicate when there's 2 minutes left and just interrupt you and then tell you when your time is up. And then we'll hand over to the panelists. And there's also, it's quite fast paced, so you'll have 3 to 4 minutes each to give feedback to the teams. And then we'll have 10 minutes for peers feedback. And just for those teams that are presenting today, to just take in the feedback. It's quite tempting to respond or defend or, you know, but just to take the feedback in. There might be moments where you need to clarify, and you're welcome to do that. But we really trying to be in a sort of listening role and take the feedback. So I'm going to hand over to Doreen, who is leading the presentation with the Zambia team. So over to you, Doreen. Let me know if you want me to share the presentation.
Yes, please, Rachel. I share this, the presentation. It will make it much easier for me.
Is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Great, Doreen, your time starts now.
Okay, so thank you so much, and greetings from Team Zambia. We are so excited with where we have reached, and even more so for the prospects that lie ahead. It was mentioned earlier that this is going to be more like a dragon's den, and that already makes us a bit anxious, but we are excited, and we are looking forward to getting feedback from our experts who have joined us this afternoon, and we are very grateful that you could spend some time to just be with us and give us valuable feedback. Just some background about Team Zambia. The next page, please. We are a multi-sectoral team with representation from the Ministry of Finance, the insurance regulator, that is the Pensions and Insurance Authority, where I'm coming from. We also have insurers and also brokers that are represented on our team. We also have representation from cooperating partners and also a social enterprise focusing on agriculture in rural areas. Our team is focusing on promoting agriculture insurance as a risk mitigation option in addressing some of the financial risks that farmers are facing as a result of climate change. What is the problem, you might ask? The biggest problem we have in Zambia is high poverty levels, and the majority in this bracket are actually small-scale holder farmers. Unfortunately, this group is also largely financially excluded, especially when it comes to insurance uptake, which if they had could help them deal with some of the financial shocks that they keep facing and also driving them in the poverty cycle. So what we tend to see is that they do not have financial solutions, especially insurance solutions. So they make progress in one particular year. In the following year, when they have financial shocks, they tend to get back and slide back in the poverty cycle. And then we see this cycle repeating itself and people failing to come out of the poverty cycle. Some contributing factors include limited information and awareness on insurance, and also the lack of trust in insurance products. Insurance is viewed as a financial product for the formal sector. So we have some people that have completely not heard about insurance, and we have some people that have heard about insurance, but are not very sure about how insurance works. Well, we have a certain category of people who have not had positive feedback on insurance, maybe based on what they've heard from their friends, or just because of lack of confidence, where they feel that they don't really understand how insurance works. Am I audible? I'm getting some feedback that I may not be audible.
You're very clear, Doreen.
All right, okay, thank you. So that is basically the problem that we are trying to address. Next slide, please. Our target audience is there for the farmer in the rural area, and in particular, vulnerable youths and also women in the agriculture sector. And this is because of the intrinsic challenges that some of these people have. Youths, especially women in the rural areas, they're already disadvantaged, and it's even worse when it comes to financial products such as insurance products. It is therefore the reason why we decided to specifically target the youths and women, because we believe that these are the people that need the help most. We also intend to target community leaders, and these include agriculture extension officers, farmers association leaders, traditional leaders, and also other association leaders who help us in championing our cause and spreading the information in the communities. Next slide, please. So our idea focuses on how we'll be able to raise insurance in the communities. Like I have indicated, we intend to use community leaders, and we are going to call them insurance champions to disseminate information in the rural areas and also to the farmers. Why did we decide to use community leaders, who we are calling insurance champions? This is basically because local community leaders have already earned community trust. They live in the communities. They have helped communities in resolving certain issues in the past, and they have earned community trust. Therefore, information that is going to come from a community leader is more believable than information that is going to come from an outsider, someone who's not experiencing the same challenges that the community leader probably would be engaging, because the community leader lives in this particular community. They are probably facing the same challenges and also looking for similar solutions. So there is going to be buy-in from that perspective. Next slide, please. So how does our process looks like? The first step that we intend to undertake is have a stakeholder mapping where we identify our targets audience, particularly in this phase, the community leaders that we are going to work with in the communities in terms of raising awareness on insurance. Once we've identified these community champions, we are then going to engage them through focus group discussions to understand the community needs, especially with regards to risk mitigation, to also understand some of the risks they are facing, how they are currently coping with some of these risks, and if they think insurance could be a solution, and just to also get more understanding on how they view insurance. Is it something that they understand? Is it something that they think would be able to assist them? What do they think about the current insurance products that we have on the market? What do they think about the way we package information currently and how we disseminate this information? And also generally how they perceive insurance services in Zambia at the moment. Once we get this information, we're then going to package it and come up with content that we are going to use to train the community leaders. Once we have trained and engaged the community leaders, we'll then get into our campaign, which is going to be driven, like I have indicated, by the insurance champions coming from the communities. And these will be the foot soldiers who will go out in the communities and sensitize members of the public on insurance. Once that process is we come up with reports and change where need be. And once that is done, we'll then move forward to source for funding and see if we can scale up the activities in other areas as well. Next slide, please. How will our campaign help the target clients? The first is risk awareness. We believe that most of our target audience right now is not very sure about the risks that they face. And where they do know the risks that they face, they are not too sure what they could do about some of these risks. We also hope that through our campaign, there's going to be awareness on insurance as a financial risk mitigation tool. And therefore, the farmer will be able to know how to deal with some of these risks. For instance, which risks they should accept, and know that there's nothing that they can do about them. They'll be able to identify which risks they can reduce in terms of being proactive and doing something about it before it happens or after it happens. They'll also be able to identify which risks they can avoid and which risks they can transfer to an insurance company. And that is because it's not all risks that they'll be able to transfer to the insurance company. We also hope that by having this information, the farmer at the end of the day is going to make better commercial decisions and view the farming as a business rather than just a by the way thing that they tend to do all the time. We also hope that through this campaign, we'll be able to promote financial resilience and financial security in communities. And then finally, we have a few questions for our coaches and experts that we have today. The first is, what is the best way of keeping open communication in an insurance campaign? If you could share some of the experiences that you may have had or projects that you can refer to. The second question is, how can we make this campaign experience driven? Would like to use testimonials in driving our campaign. Do you have any ideas, suggestions, or actually lessons that we can use in our campaign? And finally, our last question is, do you have any examples or insights on any other campaigns that have used community champions in raising awareness on insurance? Thank you so much for your attention, and we now look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen, and a round of applause to the Zambia team. It would be great to see emojis from everyone. Great, well done to the team. So we now open it up for the round of feedback. My suggestion is that everyone else turns their camera off except for the panelists and the Zambia team, so that the panelists are talking to Zambia team members. So if Zambia team could turn on their cameras, that would be great. And what I'm going to do is repost the specific questions that the team had in the chat box for the panelists, so that you have them at hand. But it would be great to sort of be able to see each other in the conversation. So just to check if the Zambia team is able to put their cameras on. And I think we'll start with ladies first, Rachel, Elias, and then Agrotosh. So Rachel, you have sort of 3 to 4 minutes, and look forward to hearing your feedback.
Okay, great. You can hear me okay?
Very well.
Excellent. Okay. Actually, I think I have more questions than comments, but I took a few notes down. So some of the things I wrote down were, one of the things that I particularly appreciated was getting at what are the root causes for lack of uptake. So the whole focus group piece and really understanding what is getting in the way. The other thing that really resonated for me was the local champions. In my experience, it is absolutely paramount to have local community leaders already bought in. So that particular part of it really stood out for me. And, you know, just, I guess some of the questions I have, curious to understand a little bit more about how you're going to work specifically with the insurers. So for example, if you are, if through the focus group work, you have a clear understanding of what's getting in the way, you probably already have quite a bit of knowledge around that anyway. And, you know, certainly you can do a lot of work within the community around education and market development, but I'm curious to know how you're going to work directly with insurers so that one, they understand the opportunity within the markets that you've specifically identified, women and youth. And two, there may be some opportunity there for them to tailor how they market their products as well. And all of this kind of made me reflect back on my experience. And this goes quite a ways back when I was at AXA. But when I was there, we had taken a very similar approach to developing the women's market. We actually created an entire campaign that we called the Family Love Letter. And it was very much aimed at understanding, you know, what is important to women. And then, you know, at the end of the day, the product itself, none of that really changed. It was more the education and marketing around it. The other question I had is, I'd like to understand a little bit more around the connection between climate and the populations identified. So those are, you know, those are basically, I'm just looking at the questions that you've asked. Yeah, I think that's kind of the whole of my feedback. But, you know, I think to me, I guess the two main things are, you know, really on board with the whole focus group idea and the community champions and really wanting to understand how you're going to work with the insurers.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really great feedback. And I think your questions are important. This is a fledgling idea, so I think those questions will really guide the evolution of that. So thanks so much. Over to Elias.
Thank you, and a great presentation, Doreen, and the rest of the team. Seems that you guys have done some work on this. Yeah, so ideally, there are a couple of things that I would want to also bring into perspective. You did mention two important issues that you are trying to tackle. That's lack of information and lack of trust. From your pitch, I've seen that lack of information is something that is well addressed in terms of how you are going to tackle it. But I haven't seen a component that is going to address lack of trust, because I didn't see in the pitch how the lack of trust really arises. And basically, looking at what Rachel has mentioned, lack of trust is highly propagated by the industry, the insurance industry, and I've not seen how then they are going to address that issue. We are looking into using more like trusted brands. In this particular case, you're talking about community champions that in one or the other, we want them to take the bargain of building trust. But we also need to kind of think about how does this lack of trust arise? And that's an area that I haven't seen the way the pitch has been put together, how it will be able to address that, because this highly comes from the insurance players. And in one or the other, if maybe claims are not paid on time, or there are so many other things that are needed in terms of maybe documentation, or in one or the other declines happen, then in this case, then lack of trust comes through, and that cannot only be solved through maybe consumer education or awareness creation. There is something that needs to happen from the insurance industry side. Also, something that I've seen is that we intend to kind of do a more elaborate awareness, whereby you'll start come with some form of discussions, and within that, then you create content and kind of propagate that through a campaign, whereby the community leaders will lead the campaign. The key thing here is how then will the insurance industry plug in, because in one or the other, it will depend, or it will remain an insurance component. How then do you carry along the industry around this? Because also you don't want to ideally put away the insurance industry out of this, or the insurance companies out of this, in terms of trying to one or the other build trust, but they must also be part of that particular exercise. So it will be important to see how then they will be able to plug in into this. Maybe some form of advice. I've seen this being done in different countries, and maybe, for example, I've seen the Kenyan regulator using what we call the community champions, basically to create awareness, and they identified these particular champions across the country, and they use those particular champions in one way or the other in building awareness. So that's a model that maybe you could look at how successful it has been, or how unsuccessful it has not, how maybe it has not been successful, and kind of look at what other modalities can you be able to use in terms of improving your current model. Otherwise, I think this is a challenge that is there, lack of information, lack of trust. There are other challenges that maybe might lead to low uptake, not only lack of trust and lack of information, but how then do you even look at other particular components that lead to low uptake? Is this model, will you scale it up to basically bring the other components that you are not addressing? Because one or the other, if we need to increase the uptake, then there are other acting forces or challenges that also need to be addressed. And it will be important to look at how then your model will also include some of these particular challenges that you might not have highlighted when coming up with this particular idea. Thank you. And I'll be able to look at questions and see how best we can help on those particular questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elias. And thanks for also, pointing out that it's important for the industry to look at itself and see what it needs to improve as a important component of this possible project. So thanks so much. Agritosh, over to you.
Thanks a lot. So firstly, thanks a lot for the pitch. It was really interesting. And I think, one thing I really liked about it is that it sort of leverages on the trust that people have on community leaders, and also the fact that I think with insurance awareness or awareness about anything in general, it's important to have a continuity of point of contact. So not just some, salesperson who comes once a year and says something and goes away. So the fact that here you would have a community leader who would, or influential person in the community involved, that also can lead to a form of continuity in the awareness raising. I think a few points, maybe I was just making a few notes on maybe kind of open questions I have, or ways of maybe to think of ways of improving your idea in the future, or as part of this process. I think one basic question I had was one idea, or one thought I had was around whether it should be the same approach used for different groups that you're targeting, or whether the approach should be different. Because you mentioned women and youth as one of the main focus. So, for example, with youth, I know a lot of youth, and as all around the world and in rural parts as well, a lot of youth are actually, they're also on social media. Some people have access to WhatsApp and so on. So would they be engaged through the same method of basically of interacting with community leaders, or would a WhatsApp video be more influential that they can pass around each other and so on? So just a kind of an open question on whether the method should be, whether it should vary between different categories of the target participants of the target population. The other question I had was around in general, I see advantages with working with community leaders on this. However, there are quite a few disadvantages as well. One being that maybe to some extent community leaders would need a lot of training on the concepts of, the basic concepts of insurance and even other financial services and so on, before they are at a position where they can actually pass on that awareness to others. So I was wondering whether this approach should be restricted to community leaders only, or whether it should also be other types of people in rural areas. Like I think you mentioned a few of them in the presentation, like the extension workers and agriculture dealers and so on. And then also, I think around that, the involvement of community leaders, I think it should also be done very carefully, because in order to, differentiate to what extent they are actually doing awareness raising compared to selling an insurance product, or even marketing an insurance product. Because as you mentioned, it's true that, there are issues with reputation issues that insurance companies have in Zambia and as in many other countries in the world. So if, for example, they're promoting a certain product, or raising awareness around it, and that is seen as promoting that product, but at the end of the day there is some dispute over claims and so on, then that could affect the social fabric of that particular area, because this was a product that was promoted by the local leaders or by the community leaders. So just to be, so I think it's important to differentiate between to what extent they would actually be raising awareness compared to selling the product. And at the same time, again, this is easier said than done, that it would be awareness raising only, because the moment you start, you start having a conversation about insurance, farmers or other benefit, anyone would ask, okay, so what is the product you're talking about? Who's the insurer? They would want to know some details. So it's quite tricky to that extent to have a more abstract awareness raising compared to linking it to actual products. At the same time, if you're linking it to products, then you need to have those products and processes in place, or a means to accessing those, so that if people are then interested in getting insured, there's a way of doing that. Just jumping to your questions, I think this kind of model has been used in quite a few countries. I think in Ethiopia, insurance promoters are used. There's a fintech called Kifia Financial Services, which actually works with insurance promoters who are in the local communities, and they're influential people in the communities, and I understand that's been quite successful. In Sri Lanka as well, then there's in a government scheme insured by the AAIB, that's Agriculture and Agrarian Insurance Board. They work with community leaders for awareness raising, as well as many of the other processes, including claims processing as well, which has its pros and cons. And finally, relating to the method of communication, I think it's important to have a continuity in it so that it's done on a recurring basis, and so that it's possible for the participants to come back with, if they have questions, for them to be able to direct their questions to people and get them answered. I think also it'll be important to consider ways of actually ensuring the community leaders themselves first, because again, it's important for them to have a first-hand experience with the actual product in order to really understand the pros and cons of the product itself and even the concept itself. And I think this can also be a challenge with like a lot of the community leaders may not have any experience with insurance themselves currently. So maybe one of the steps in this process can actually be to to find a way to actually insure them in the first place so that they can speak from their first-hand experience. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Egritosh, and thanks for the detailed feedback, looking at the different ways of communicating depending on the target group, the role of community leaders and what needs to be done to get them equipped to move forward, and these great suggestions of ideas. So thank you to our Dragons, Sharks, panelists, coaches. Really appreciate the feedback. Let's open the floor to peers in the iLab cohort. Let's hear from you if you have any questions or comments for the Zambia team. Any contributions that you'd like to add? So we've got some encouraging words in the chat box. Kutsai from Zimbabwe saying, well done to the team. And yeah, well done for kicking us off. It's always nerve-wracking to be the first one. So just well done to the Zambia team. If there aren't any questions from the cohort, perhaps it gives a little time for the Zambia team to receive the feedback and perhaps ask any clarifying questions or share some additional thoughts. So I'm going to hand over to the team. I don't know, Doreen, if you want to stay in the role that you are in, or someone else would like to respond to our panelists.
I think we'll share. Members can also take up some of the questions that were raised.
Perhaps, Doreen, just first off, how was it to hear the feedback?
I think the feedback is good. It gives us more perspective in terms of what we need to look at. When you're working as a team, sometimes you don't tend to see certain things, but when you get such feedback, it obviously gives you enough room to improve and also see where your gaps were. And yes, I can confirm that some of the feedback that we've received today, we didn't think about it earlier, but definitely it would have been a challenge if we had proceeded without this feedback. So definitely it's going to help us improve and just ensure that we tie up all those loose ends in terms of our process. I think there's some food for thought, especially, I know there was a last question, I think from Egritosh, where he talks about starting with community leaders, maybe experiencing. I think that's a very good, feedback. We don't know how it can be done, but I think it's important, especially if we want these community leaders to also be the ones to share the testimonies, because you can't sell something or you can't advocate for something that you haven't experienced. So we have to try and find a way of how we can address this. There was also the issue of trust, I think, which the experts have talked about. When we decide to use champions, these are people that are trusted. And we are taking a product, insurance, which doesn't have a very good reputation. So it's like they'll be putting their heads on the chopping board. So yes, we have to be very careful in the manner in which we ask them to deliver the message. And most importantly, yes, they should not be seen to be marketing or selling insurance, but rather helping people understand insurance, helping people to understand how they can go about selecting the best insurance company that can help them, because it's not just any insurance company that they'll be able to transact with. So it will be very important for them to be able to take this information out there in that manner, and also to help them understand that they have rights and obligations as insurance policy holders. So this is a message that needs to be included in our campaign to help people understand what their rights are. If there's a problem, where do you go? There's a regulator, this is the complaints procedure. So that information has to filter through to the communities. There was also the issue of, what issue did I want to speak to? Pardon? The recruitment campaign. Okay, just a minute, sorry. I think there was the issue of the connection between climate change and the direct population. I think we didn't think about that so much in terms of women, like in terms of, so we know that rural areas, they are the most hit. When it comes to climate change, people that are most affected are farmers in the rural areas. And that is because this is all they depend on in terms of their livelihood. So if there's a drought or a flood in that particular year, it means that they do not have any source of income. And when it comes to women, women are already disadvantaged in these community areas, and they have to, they are the home caretakers. So in such situations, they still have to provide for the family. And this is why we decided to find means of helping women cope with some of these challenges. I think that the issue with the youths is also similar. Youths will tend to look for other opportunities if you do not provide solutions in terms of what they are currently dealing with at the moment. So one way of also helping youths flourish in their communities is by providing such financial solutions to them so that they do not then migrate to urban areas. They should be able to find farming productive. And one way of doing this is by offering them insurance, because then they'll be able to mitigate some of the risks. And also, most importantly,
sorry, just to interrupt you there for a second. Andrew's hand's been up for a little while.
Okay.
And do you want to just make your closing remark?
Yes. I think I'll make my closing remarks by saying that it's also important that when we go in this campaign, insurance is not being projected as the ultimate solution to the challenges that are in the communities. It's just going to contribute to financial inclusion and also financial resilience and also security. The same goes with consumer education. Consumer education will not address all the challenges that we are currently facing as Zambia to improve insurance uptake. And therefore, I know that as a regulator, we are working on the challenges that are in the industry right now, and I know that other players are also doing the same. Thank you. I'll hand over to Andrew now.
Thanks, Doreen. Is that from me? Sorry.
It is echoing from you. I'm not sure. It seems a bit better now.
Okay. Sorry.
Need to take off one of your the system you're using. You have two of them open. Take off the volume on one of them.
Hello.
You've joined on two devices, so they're echoing.
Hello? Hello? Okay. I'll type in my response. Okay. Yeah.
Just remove your volume from one of the device. Remove the volume from one of the device.
Can you get me now?
It's much better.
Well, I can't hear you, so I'll go either way. All right, okay. So yeah, just on the back very quickly of what Doreen was saying, and I think one of the questions that were raised or observations around what we particularly propose or are looking at in terms of sustainability, from what I understood the question to be around obviously getting insurance companies to, I think potentially, or the industry from a player perspective, potentially take the lead with regards to long-term sustainability around education and perception changes in the industry, especially where trust is concerned. I think one of the issues that we spoke to, though not detailed, of course, because I think we're still thinking around it, is how best we can collectively come up with some kind of incentives that speak to this particular action or call to insurers. So the basic example would be around issues to do around claim settlement, for example, in this particular sector. What kind of reward would we be able to come up with that basically incentivizes industry players, in this case insurers, to actually live up to the standard and live up to the standard regularly? I think in one of the sessions that came up, one of the suggestions was around obviously some kind of public or government incentive around potential tax concessions for companies that are directly involved in this sector in view of or in way of providing insurance cover for, as an example, as just one of them. It could be distribution, it could be anything else, but particularly in that particular area would qualify in this particular case for some kind of incentive, but as a incentive. But as a rider to that, the qualification would be around potentially meeting certain benchmarks. So does insurer X, for example, pay their claims on time? What kind of customer feedback or pain points around their servicing are normally addressed? And I think from a broader perspective, courtesy of the regulator, of course, and the industry as a whole, we do have basic guidelines around microinsurance that have been in the market. And I think those would be the stepping stones. But above and beyond that, I think one incentive to get industry players, particularly insurers, to up their game and standards, and potentially also take this to the next level in terms of going on with the culture and obviously pursuing the standards that we hope this particular prototype will be able to set in the beginning. It's basically one way of providing incentives to them, though economic in nature and obviously not low-hanging fruit because of the implications and obviously the length in discussions and negotiations and advocacy when you're talking with the government and things like that. But I think that's one particular area that we saw could potentially galvanize that kind of spirit and reinforce the standard that the consumer themselves can experience. Because I think the issue is, as I understand it, is basically, will the champions we have decided to go with are basically the representatives or the voice, but above and beyond that, there has to be a call to action to support whatever it is they're saying. If that doesn't happen, it just puts them in bad light as well. So I think in the longer term, I think those are some of the issues we discussed at a higher level that we feel could potentially galvanize the general action, call to action for insurers and all players that are customer facing to live up to the standard and further develop trust. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And thanks again to our dragons, sharks, coaches for your feedback here. I think it can really highlight blind spots, because as you get into these discussions, you kind of foreground some things and other things get a little lost. So thank you for, filling in the gaps and making a much more whole picture. And just congratulations to the Zambia team. They've worked long and hard. All the teams have, but they've worked long and hard to get to this point. And there's a deep commitment to create the change that they want to see. So thanks again to Team Zambia. I'm going to hand over to Yanis, who's going to take us into the next pitch.
Thanks, Rachel. And again, congratulations on my behalf to Team Zambia. Now we're going to give the center stage to Costa Rica to do their presentation. I think it's going to be Fernando from that team that will do the presentation. Hi, Fernando. And I think Maria will be sharing her screen. So again, similar format, 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yanis, I cannot do it because I allowed permission. Maybe you can project.
Try again, Maria.
Okay.
So similar format. We'll hear from you about the idea in about 10 minutes, and then we'll go back to the panelists. We can see things. So without further ado, over to you, Fernando.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Well, and good afternoon, of course, all across the globe. So my name is Fernando, and I appreciate you all being here. For some minutes, I'll be representing our amazing Costa Rica team and our series of ideas, which we've called Futurismo, right? This is, of course, is a play of words that means the future of tourism. So let's get right to it, right? Let me ask you a question. What kind of long-term resiliency can a country truly have when it is so vulnerable to climate risk, right? What is the destiny of its people when both its economy and actually our families depend on the decision of having opened our doors to serve the world so many years ago? 8.2% of our GDP is tourism. And for us, 450,000 jobs are created directly or indirectly by tourism. Let me put that in perspective, right? We are not only in need of creating more jobs, but tourism has 20% of the active population directly or indirectly linked to it. 60% of the workforce is women, right? So thinking of gender equality, they would be most vulnerable if we have an affection to the sector. So let's bear in mind also that 90% plus of our tourism is outdoors. And let's be honest, just by looking back a couple of years, we can already see how climate change has already affected the tourist experience. When we have storms, when we have hurricanes, we have had tourists stuck in a region, stuck in a hotel, with the hoteliers not prepared to continue to serve them and its employees within isolation, even if it's just for a short term. And hoteliers are not only not prepared, but in many ways, we think they're not aware of the reality, the likelihood, and the impact of these events. Whom is to tackle this complex problem when the sector is really a wide base of small and medium enterprises, micro in many of the senses. And we believe that the force of our tourism is based both in the fact of what I just shared. We have a lot of diversity, right? We have 32 national parks, we have protected areas, we have mountains, we have volcanoes, we have beaches in 2 different oceans, we have jungles, we have mangroves. But nevertheless, when we add the huge complexity of how climate change information and climate risk information is organized, and when we have to add the struggle of the day-to-day of managing a small business in a highly competitive environment, who can do this, right? Can it naturally lead to a free rider problem? We think it is at least confusing and maybe even paralyzing for these business people. So through this lab, we want to use what I just shared to our advantage. We see potential in these same facts, and we are conceptualizing a web solution that is easily accessible to the business people that are all across our country. This would be a geolocated online solution that feels very customized, right? And that speaks directly to the geolocated inherent risks that are both pertinent and immediate to the user, and that makes them aware of their closest environment. From this risk management perspective, we could help them prioritize and take action. We would include self-assessment tools, expert training, and in short, we believe that by making the climate risk problem a me problem instead of my neighbor's problem, we can be the catalyst that drives action. After an era of significant struggle, we call it season 0 here in Costa Rica for tourism. Maybe now is the non-intuitive but ideal moment. We can now call everyone to be better prepared for the next coming crisis. And it is coming, right? So instead of solely being the victims of outside sources, we can start an iterative education, an iterative process to create an education platform that uses gamification within its process, a process that should and shall not stop until we find a way to make this platform a call so that everybody who visits it gets information, understands, but also promotes a network effect where the obvious option is always to share the content with your peers, to comment with your peers, to organize with your peers in that same region so you can tackle those risks that are just on your surroundings. And we already started to contact the tourism sector, right? We want to talk to business people, want to talk to sectorial organizations so that we find a way that this happens. And this does not stop here. I mean, we also need to build a community and a dynamic marketplace where insurance companies, brokers, and we can stay in the previous slide just for a minute more or so, but we want to build a community and a dynamic marketplace where also insurance companies, brokers, advisors, and others can offer solutions and help develop and execute both mitigation and adaptation projects. We know that what we're creating is only the content, right? And not the end in mind. We do not know how to monetize, but we do know that if we get people engaged, if we get them to visit as a pattern of behavior, and if we get them to share, that will be valuable at some point. So we are working on finding funding. This won't be as easy to develop from an economic perspective. We most certainly need to add experts to our core group so that we can find, there's a lot of available resources, and both internationally, but our country has a lot of available resources, but we need to find the proper content, create good capsules, and also develop a desirable user experience. Because nowadays, we need the content, but we need also to make it very easy to use for people all across our country. Specifically, we also need to help, we need help on finding ways, more creative ways maybe, that you've seen as to how we can monetize. And also, please help us see what we're not seeing, help us correct course in what we're visualizing. We are truly looking for feedback and help, because, you know, maybe, and just maybe, with Futurismo, and if we get this network effects going on, we can create a sector and a country that is more resilient towards the future. So that's our presentation. I think I cede the rest of the 4 minutes to my team first, if somebody wants to add something, and if not, we can go with the panelists. So thank you very much.
Really great presentation, Fernando. Thanks for that excellent summary. Short and sweet and to the point. I just want to put in the chat box here the support that you're asking. It's data, climate risks, audio-visual, and there was one fourth element there in the presentation. I wasn't able to write that down, but I want to put it in the chat box if you can. One of the Costa Rica team, then we can put it in the chat box as well, so it's there for everyone.
It's available data, climate risk, audiovisual tools, and communication.
Okay, yeah, and comms, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. So we all know the drill. Now we're going to just hear back from the coaches. I propose we go the other way around now. We start with the person who was last. I think that was Agrotosh. So let's hear from you first, Agrotosh. What do you think is good about this? If there's something you could share in terms of the questions that the team needs support with, the support points that I've put in the chat box, and then any questions or suggestions that you have for this idea. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks for the pitch. It was really interesting, and it's quite a new kind of idea, I would say, compared to what we usually come across. So thanks a lot for this kind of innovative thinking. I think what I certainly do like the concept of getting very personalized, bespoke kind of scores, or like an idea of what of how the climate risks would affect the specific SMEs, and then ways of managing it. So that makes it, as you said, makes it much more urgent for people to take action if it is personalized in that way. I think a few comments first before I go into the questions. So again, a few kind of questions, suggestions really on points to think about. I think one is maybe a little bit relating to one of your questions as well on the data. So I think it's there is certainly an opportunity out there, I think, of using a lot of the, for example, the satellite-based data sets for providing this kind of information. I think in general, this is something which, in my line of work, I work a lot with satellite data sets for index insurance and so on. And one of the things that always strikes me is that we're only scratching at the surface. We're just using it for something very specific on parametric insurance, and that even in a very specific way. But actually, that data can be used in many other ways. And I think your app is one of the, it could be an example of the way the data is used. So having said that, I think one point to think about is the accuracy of these satellite data sets, because there are, I'm sure for Costa Rica as well, there would be many different satellite data sets available measuring different parameters. But then the accuracy of the way that, the satellite data sets have measured both past and future events are not always as, as good as we might think it was. I remember in some of the Caribbean countries where some fairly, famous sources of satellite data actually missed some very important hurricanes which took place some years ago. So the point is, it'll be important to really verify the accuracy of the satellite data sets you're using, and also to look at what types of data sets this information, the risk score, as it were, is going to be based on. Is it mostly going to be based on remote sensing and satellite data, or will you use other types of data, maybe data from early warning systems, and also from the local community? So it'll be good to understand what are the different types of data which can be used there. The other point was, kind of a suggestion was around thinking of, who would be the customers at the end of the day of this system. So you mentioned the SMEs and MSMEs, then that makes a lot of sense. But could it also be government in a way? Because, for example, given the economic importance of tourism for Costa Rica, so would the government be interested in having a system like this, and actually in being the main customer, and then providing this information at a free or a low cost basis to different enterprises? And indeed, could tourists themselves be a customer? So when someone visits, they're also maybe part of, there's a levy or a tax that is being used to pay for these types of services. And then also one other question I had was, currently for SMEs in Costa Rica, are there existing climate risk insurance products which are available and which are being purchased by SMEs and MSMEs, or are the products, so it kind of a little bit similar to the previous pitch, that is this about, is this, are there already existing products and processes which, the system can be plugged into? So that was something I was also wondering. I think that's the main feedback from my side for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Agrutosh. That's really great. I see the team here is writing down the comments and the questions and the suggestions. At the same time, I want to notice there's a comment in the chat box by Kutsai. Some questions: how will this app work? It's an early alarm system, or it's help on what to do when in crisis. Real-time reporting. I think some of the most insightful ideas come from creative vagueness. So if the idea is not clear, if people fill in the gaps and they think, oh, does it work this way? Does it work that way? And you can actually just take some inspiration and, oh, could it be real-time reporting, or could it be real-time in some way, or could we have an early alarm system in this? Or maybe there are things that you haven't considered, but it could be interesting to almost like borrow these creative, vague suggestions. I'm gonna just go to our next dragon there. Elias is coming next. Elias, over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that the problem is well researched, and the team put a lot of time to kind of just understand what the problem is. But I'm struggling to kind of get where this solution is going, and that's the biggest challenge that I'm having. You know, we are basically talking about so many components, and we just need to know, because when you're developing an app, it must address a particular problem, and I couldn't see that. I have seen that they've talked about self-awareness tools and basically asking for more ideas, and definitely I'll be able to provide that. But when we talk about climate change, particularly in an area whereby you are attracting tourists, then also we need to think about nature, because it's not only about climate, but tourists are also attracted through nature. So there's a very small, I would say, difference between how you solve climate-related risks and ignore nature. So what I wanted to kind of see out of this solution is what actions will be needed, because we are all aware, and ideally, when you talk about self-assessment tools, then that basically helps to provide what we call perceptions on what people think about climate change, and how maybe nature risks will affect maybe the tourists or the tourism industry in Costa Rica. So there's one level that we need to go. What actions will be needed, and what actions will this particular application help to solve? Maybe just moving beyond the perception, because from the presentation I got that the team will be looking at how different actors will perceive climate change, and even provide information on how climate change would impact the tourism industry. It's also important to just think about implementation. What are these quick things will these particular persons that will be using this particular app get? Because if today you are told that you need to download an app, the next thing is that you'll be able, you just delete it, because it doesn't give you the daily components that you really require. Because and that's the challenge that you get when you are developing applications or websites. So how then do you make the application be something that the community that you're talking about, the small, the SMEs in Costa Rica be looking forward to have? So we need to think about implementation. We talked, the team talked about data. Okay, fine. We might need to move beyond just satellite data, but also if you are basically looking at providing information and creating awareness, there's need to come up with a taxonomy. How will these particular persons be able to know the level at which they are solving issues that would impact tourism, such as climate change? So can they be able to, as they do their self-assessments, what kind of feedback will they be able to get, and how can that become competitive in terms of maybe giving them some incentives on how then they address issues of climate change? So there are a couple of things that we need to think about within this particular idea. I think we just need to be specific on what we want to get from this. It's so wide. We need also to complement this with nature, because when you talk about tourism, you cannot only talk about climate, you need to talk about nature, and climate really impacts nature, and that is a component that we need to think about. We need to think about both mitigation and adaptation, how this idea will solve this. We know it will be important to be very specific what mitigation components we really need to bring into practice, what adaptative components we really need to bring into the perspective out of this particular application. But the key thing is that we might need kind of zoom in and look at how then do we make this work. It's a very brilliant idea. It's a great idea, but we need to look at how then do we make it work so that it will be the next big component that will be addressing this big challenge that currently the world is talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Elias. And also to notice that Jose also responded already to the question from before. So a bit more information about the idea is in the chat box. These are all great suggestions, and I'm gonna just pass the ball over to Rachel as our third coach to give her thoughts and insights.
Okay, I think you can hear me now. Okay, so really helpful to see that response in the chat because I had very similar questions. I was trying to understand exactly what the purpose is of the app. So that already has informed some of my feedback. But let me start with first, I love a good pun, so love the name. And also the novelty of this, I think is really interesting and innovative. And I could see something like this taking off in a number of other countries who are all facing very similar challenges. Countries for whom tourism is an economic generator. So one of the things, so two main comments. One is, I think it would be helpful, the structure of the pitch, to the point I already made, to just have the clarity of, there's the problem, who specifically is the user, how will this app specifically help the user? I think just a little bit more clarity around that. And I think the other thing is, when I think about the technology, one of the things that I want to know, so if it's the SMEs who are going to use it, what is their current level of use around similar technology? So you could create a really great app, but if people aren't quite clear how to use it, how do you help them then use that application? And it reminds me a little bit of just even now with COVID and travel. And I think about now that I'm starting to travel again and the different apps I've had to download, that the clarity or the instructions that come with the app aren't always clear, and the usefulness and the real-time uploading of data, those are all the kinds of things that I'm thinking about at the moment. The other thing that I think about, this is probably a wider issue, is just when I think about climate and change and human behavior, I think that there's generally a dynamic that even if there's a hurricane, 3 weeks ago, there is this dynamic of people feeling like, well, if it's not gonna, people have a short-term memory, I think, lapse, where people think, well, that happened before, but it's not gonna happen to me. So I think really helping people to see how something that is often talked about very theoretically, climate change, and even in real-time situations, there was a hurricane just, a few weeks ago, a year ago, whatever. I think there is still that hurdle of people feeling like, why do I want to spend money on an insurance product for something that may not happen again? So I'm not quite sure if that comment is super clear, but just helping people to make that bridge. And then, of course, given my background and my focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I heard you mention at the beginning that I think you said 60% of the workforce affected are women. And so I'm curious to know how you're going to address that aspect of this particular challenge. So I think those are the, and the only other thing I thought of just in terms of apps is, when you think about as you develop the app, who are the people that are involved in developing it? And so, I think about how do you engage people like the TikTok generation, of which I'm not one, and that still mystifies me, frankly. But as you're developing an app and thinking about, what are the kinds of iterations that you'll be looking at? How do you engage people who are already in there developing new and innovative, aspects of technology to inform your thinking as you're looking to develop the app? So those are my general comments.
Thanks, Rachel. And thanks to all of the coaches for their helpful suggestions and comments. I can see there's appreciation from the team. I want to open this now to the rest of the teams, and also to remind you, the teams here are looking also for supports on data, climate risks, AV tools, and comms. I just put it in the chat box. So also anyone else from the other teams has any suggestions, ideas, thoughts about how to get support on these 4 items, now is the time to share that with our Costa Rica team. So let's open it up for the entire lab now. Some coaching or inputs from peers. Doreen from Zambia.
Okay, I'm going to pick it up from the question in terms of the request that they've made. And my question is, on your team, do you have any experts that deal with climate risks, especially from maybe government? Because I believe most governments have departments that are focusing on climate risks and also raising awareness on such occurrences, especially in areas like where Costa Rica is located. So maybe just an appreciation of who's on your team. And yes, because you could actually find this information from within the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. Teresa is congratulating you as well in the chat box. What do other people think here? What are some of your inputs? Anyone seen anything like this? Anything that the team can get inspired by? You can also share resources, anything really that can help this team move forward to the next step with this idea.
Just one more component that I wanted to bring into perspective. Right. I would be happy to see the team talking with the Global Climate Fund that highly focuses on moving from just creating awareness and perception and getting some actions around climate change, and they do provide funding, so it will be a good area to focus on and see how best they could get support. Also, there are a number of task forces across the world that are currently talking about climate change. It will be important for the team to kind of plug in some of these organizations and task forces just to kind of get more material that would support into taking this forward. But generally, I think this is an area that needs to be looked at, and climate change is real, and this solution can really be transformative if we can just address some of the issues that we've just mentioned. I'm also happy to kind of have further discussion with them and see how best we could support this particular idea. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Elias. Some potential funding from the Green Climate Fund. Maria, do you want to say something? I see you have your hand up now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you a lot to the panelists for all your feedback and to Elias about this possibility of fundraising. I just want to try to share with you some more ideas that we have. The team has a lot of ideas about what to do with this, and we have to focus for doing some first prototyping. In this matter, I just want to share with you that we are thinking first, not in an app, just it's more a web app, because an app used to demand very heavy requirements about technology, and there is it's not such an easy for people to have access to an app. We are thinking first in a web app. Then the other question that have round here about the user. We are thinking first to onboard the owners and general manager of the SMEs. Tourist sector has an advantage. It's a very important sector of the Costa Rican economy. And then there is I think that is a very well organized sector. There is a strong sectorial association. There is a tourist minister that have a very good contact with all the participants in the sector. I think that is a big advantage in this sector that we want to take in favor to this initiative. Then we are thinking first trying to abort this through the affiliates of the gremial, the sectoral organization, through the Ministry of Tourism that have a big databases about the participants in the sector. And then when we try to go to the mock-up, exactly the mock-up, we want to try to test this in a zone, a specific zone. And the other point here is about what we're thinking right now to do. We at this time, we are not thinking about real-time warning. Okay, there is a hurricane coming or something like that. This is not the point. We have a very strong sector. We are a very green country. There are many efforts in the area of sustainability or climate risk, but there maybe that we need is to share this, to take all this and to put it on a to be reached by the owners, by the SMEs. It's try to organize the current resources that we have. We already have in the country insurance products to help with the effects of the climate, but maybe the SMEs, the owners, the general managers do not know about this insurance product currently available in the market. Then there is all that at the very beginning, we want to be a connection that use this web app to connect all the parts, okay, and to try to customize this with the owners, to feel this as a me experience, as Fernando said. Okay, we are here in this area and we are facing this type of potential risk. Okay, trying to put them with training, training options available. We are trying to take it, to put in practice this principle about use what you have right now. Then you can, we know that there are many resources, many efforts in programs, and we want to try to organize this and to put available to the people. Okay, about let me see. Okay, what Doreen asked. Okay, we are not in the, well, in the team is focused on the supervisor, insurance companies, and insurance brokers, and the tourism ministry. We are not, definitely we are not a climate change risk. We are not climate experts risk. We are not communication experts. Then we that's why we conclude that we want to expand our core team, trying to incorporate people that are experts in these areas that we do not know in this moment. I don't know if I attend all the issues that you asked. Sorry, you have forget something. If another member of the team want to share something, please go on.
Thanks, Marielos. I'm seeing a couple of hands up, 3 hands up, no, 2 hands up. There's also some comments in the chat box from Sam. There's a point there about underscoring your concern for speed of uptake. So let's go to Marielos. Sorry, let's go to Mariela. Let's go to Mariela first, then we'll go to Agrotosh and then Fernando.
Thank you so much, and well done to the team for this great presentation. We were collecting some sort of some options of additional resources, and one idea that I just wanted to share here is that as the A2I, we're hosted by GIZ, and the GIZ also has extensive experience in tourism and climate. So if you know, there's a way of us connecting you to resources there, we're also very happy to do so. I think this is my main point, and I would stop here.
Thanks, Mariela. Agrotosh?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add a few points on, some of the different topics related to data. I think it would be good to, like the team could consider, having detailed discussions with, for example, the meteorological department in Costa Rica, because I mean that's usually a very good, first stop or a source from where to understand what weather stations are available in the country. It could be that you may not need to use a lot of remote sensing or satellite if there is quite a lot of weather stations available with good historical data available. And indeed, they might also be able to indicate which sources of satellite data they feel is, they have evidence of good skill for measuring different events in Costa Rica. So if you've not already done that, that'll be good to have discussions and good, detailed technical discussions with the meteorological department. But along with that, there are quite a few, most of the satellite data sources globally are actually, public goods. So they're freely available data sources that anyone can access it. They just know how to do it. So it's important to look at, data sets from NASA and from many other, research institutions on the satellite data side. A couple of other suggestions. I think it would be good to understand currently how the hotel owners, for example, presumably they might be buying some other types of insurance products, like for other risks like fire, theft, and so on. How do they currently do that, and do they do that through a web platform, or is it kind of broker-led? Or so I think some research on that would also be interesting, and there could be some leverages in how they're accessing these current products to, which could be used to even to maybe introduce the app, or indeed to introduce the climate insurance product through the similar channels potentially. And the other point was the app could also maybe have links to other, non-insurance ways of managing climate risks. As the example given at the start was of how when there's a bad hurricane, they were not able to keep the tourists for a while and so on. So maybe, there could be ways in which to deal with that, maybe having contingency plans of dealing with major weather events. So other non-insurance methods can also be linked in, which might make it more attractive as well from the hotel owner's perspective, especially if they are not, if they're a bit skeptical about using insurance for dealing with these types of risks currently. So the app could actually speak to both insurance and non-insurance risk management tools as well, potentially. Thanks.
Thanks, Agrotosh. Fernando.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I think this is amazing feedback. First of all, Agrotosh opened our eyes, right? We honestly hadn't discussed early warning systems, real-time reporting, or help during crises, but that's definitely, I mean, eye-opening, and that could be very powerful. Also, Elias, I think we need to be more specific. I mean, Rachel also commented on that, but that's super clear. And also to use the language of nature and climate risk. I think that play of words, we shouldn't be as focused, because that would make it much more easy to adapt. And also, yeah, Rachel, I can see how we need to make the gender aspect a part of the solution, if that's a key factor that needs to be a part of the solution. I love that comment, so thank you very much for that. And we also need not only be specific, but to make it work, right? If it's complex in the end, and if we focus too much on content, but not on the experience and the instructions, that's going to be a full struggle. And also for the whole team, everything you mentioned is super important, and we'll try to make it more specific, right? And to take it to the next level. So thank you all very much. And that was my general comment. Just to comment on this last question, Kutsai said, I love it, because he says, right, who will need the data that this solution will find, and that's the way to monetize, right? And I think that's a very simple way to put it. So thank you very much, and definitely looking forward. Somebody's commenting about the JSET project on Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. If you have more information on that, we would love to get that for sure. If not, there's an arm of the JSET here in Costa Rica, so we can certainly try and contact them as well. So thank you all very much. That's just an appreciation round, more than answers. What we need is questions, right, in the end. So we got them. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando and team Costa Rica. Again, another round of applause for the idea you're putting forward, and thanks also to the coaches and the peers for all their helpful suggestions. Rachel also just added another one in, and also Eduardo is responding. So a bit of action happening in the chat box as well, so take note. And I think this is it really in terms of the second presentation. We will have two more tomorrow. There'll be Grenada and Zimbabwe going through the same process. And make sure you're here tomorrow also for giving your inputs and feedback to the teams that didn't present today. So I hope I see everyone from Costa Rica and Zambia also in the meeting tomorrow to give generously back in the way we've all received from our peers and coaches today. So again, thanks everyone. I'm gonna hand over for the last bit of this to Mariela, and we'll speak again tomorrow, or I will speak again tomorrow. Okay, see you then.
Thank you so much, Yanis. Thank you to the two teams who've presented to our expert panel. Thank you so much. And a special thank you to Rachel for being with us today. I know that you're not with us tomorrow, but your colleague Shilpi will be. So the topics of diversity and inclusion will be very well represented tomorrow as well. So thank you for being here with us today. And now I would like to share something before we close. And I'm just waiting for the full screen, 1 second. And so for our Secret Santa in the III Lab hosting team, I received a really nice book by Rachel, actually, that has a lot of little images with you know, some little stories to it about a little mole, a little boy, and a horse. And it has a lot of life lessons. And I particularly like the life lesson that that you can see on the slide here. And I'm just gonna read it out to you for our checkout. So it says, "Do you have a favorite saying?" asked the boy. "Yes," said the mole. "And what is it?" "If at first you don't succeed, have some cake." "I see. And does it work?" "Every time." So what I would like to pose as a checkout for everyone who's here today is, what is your cake? So it could be actual cake or anything else. So is there something that you turn to, you know, some like comfort food or comforting things? Then please share here. I think it would make us all very happy to hear from what kind of things represent the cake that is mentioned here for you. So Kudzi is sharing family. Fernando is saying listening to music, and better if it's a full album. Yeah, I agree. I like full albums rather than, you know, playlists with a mix of things. A fiction book, Jose. Good coffee, Agrotosh. Good conversations, Tomas. Music, says Alejandra. The sweetest white milk chocolate I can find, Manoj. Very good. Scrabble, family and music, a good trip, ice cream and hugs, shopping. Oh, I can agree with all of that. For me, I think it is chocolate cake with like, you know, where the center is still all creamy. The beach, family and hugs, the walk in the nature, music, actual case. So I think we're on the same page here. Chat with my sisters. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, what kind of things represent the cake in your life. We definitely look forward to seeing more of the great presentations that we had today, also tomorrow. So have a great evening. I think especially the Costa Rica team and the Zambia team will have time and to relax, although it's only the start of the day for you. So hang in there. I hope that, you know, this was motivating for you. And yeah, with that, I would like to say goodbye and see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye
Rachel,
bye.
Elias, Agratosh. Well done to the teams.
So I thought I pressed stop recording, but nothing happened.